Hello, music fans. You're watching Death by Unicorn. In this video, I'm going to talk about 25 albums that are coming out in May 2024 that I plan to listen to in the metal, rock, and prog genres. So check out this video if you're looking for some new music that you want to listen to. Hopefully there will be something on this list that you'll be excited to hear. Let me know down in the comments which of these you're most excited for, and if there's any others that you're excited for coming in May 2024 that I didn't mention. And hit that subscribe button on this channel if you want to stay in the loop on my first impressions of all these as they come out. I post those weekly, and then at the end of each month, I post my top 10 of the month, so you'll be able to find out which 10 of these are my favorite. So on May 3rd, we have Wheel releasing Charismatic Leaders. This is the third album by this American band. It's progressive metal. I've never listened to an album by Wheel yet, but I did hear the single and it sounded great. I think fans of Tool will like this. Next one on May 3rd, I've got three for this day on my list. I've got Matt Page releasing Apocalypse Garden, and this is his debut solo album, I believe. But he's in a band. So he's an American artist. I think this is going to be more in the alternative rock style, but it's got some progressive rock influence, some post rock and indie rock in there. And he's the singer from a band called Dream the Electric Sleep. And I heard his band's 2023 album. I enjoyed that. So I added his solo work onto my list here to check out as well to see if that's good as well. And lastly, on May 3rd for me so far, and I might discover some more releases as the month goes on. So I'll probably end up listening to more than 25. But right now my list has 25. I think it's pronounced Dååth. It's like Daath, and the A's have like a circle above them. And The Deceivers. This is the fifth album by this American band, and it's progressive death metal with groove metal and symphonic influences. And it's actually their first new album since their self-titled in 2010. So they took a long break from making new albums. And I've surprisingly never listened to a full album by Dååth before, but I did hear the single for this album called Hex Unending, and it sounds cool, so I'll be listening. There's nice symphonic elements on that song that follow the crushing, groovy death metal riffs. So yeah, progressive death metal with groove and symphonic, pretty cool stuff there. Now let's move on to May 10th. And I've got several releases for that day, starting with The Tangent and To Follow Polaris. This is the 13th album by this band from the UK, and it's progressive rock. This one is going to be different from other albums by The Tangent because every part on the album was played by the band leader, Andy Tillison. I think he's technically putting it out under the name The Tangent for One rather than The Tangent, but I think it will still count as part of the Tangent discography, as he's always been the primary songwriter and the band leader and the consistent member from day one of the Tangent. But it's just an interesting experiment for him where he plays everything. The songs released so far sound pretty good. I like their last album as well, so I'm excited to hear this. Then I have Bill Fisher on my list. He's releasing How to Think Like a Billionaire. This is his third solo album. He's an artist from the UK. And the genre here is kind of hard to describe. It's like psych rock, but it's heavy. It's got stoner doom metal, kind of heavy psych, progressive rock, hard rock, math rock, pop, and soul influences all in there. And he's in a band called Church of the Cosmic Skull, which I've never listened to his band actually, but I have heard Bill Fisher's debut album from 2020. I thought it was excellent. So, but I must have missed his 2021 album, his follow-up sophomore album. I didn't hear that. But the early release single I heard from this third album of his called Yell of the Ringman sounds cool. So I'm looking forward to hearing this album. he was branding his genre as yacht doom, so I guess it's like a combination between yacht rock and doom metal. I can hear there's a lot of interesting influences here in Bill Fisher's music, so check it out if that sounds appealing to you. Then I have Unleash the Archers releasing Phantoma, the sixth album by this Canadian band, and it's power metal with melodic death metal and heavy metal influences. I thought their last album was very good as well. I think the vocalist, Brittany Slays, is a stellar female metal vocalist. She's among the best in the game right now, so I'm interested in hearing this. I loved her vocals on Arjen Lucassen's Star One album, the most recent one he put out under that name. And I love her vocals in this band as well. And then I have Mandoki Soulmates releasing A Memory of Our Future. This is a multinational band releasing their eighth album. It's progressive rock with jazz fusion influences. And this band features an all-star cast of band members, including Leslie Mandoki, Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull, Al Di Meola, Simon Phillips, and more. The singles I heard so far are well written and well played. But for this one, it does sound like a bunch of old dudes playing prog rock. They're playing it pretty safe. They're not pushing the boundaries or pushing the genre forward. They're just kind of playing that old school sound. They definitely sound like old guys rather than a hungry young new band that's innovating. But if you're just looking to hear really great experienced players making good prog rock songs, I think this will be a good one to check out. And lastly, for May 10th, I have Knocked Loose releasing You Won't Go Before You're Supposed to, the third album by this American band. This is metalcore with hardcore punk influences. The two early release singles I heard were good. They were really hardcore and intense, dissonant music with those nasty panic chords on the guitar and essentially all harsh scream vocals. So it's not for people who aren't ready for something really hardcore and intense. But one of the early singles had a guest spot from Poppy, which was interesting. She does a great job with her harsh vocals too on that. And moving on to May 17th, got a bunch of releases on my list for that day, starting with probably the one of my top two that I'm most excited for this month, which is Intervals and Memory Palace. This is the fifth album by this Canadian band. They're instrumental progressive metal with prog rock, djent, and jazz fusion influences. And I love everything Intervals has done, so I expect this will also be excellent and will probably make my year-end top 50 albums. Even though I'm not usually as into instrumental music, I do make an exception for Intervals. They're probably my second favorite instrumental band after Animals as Leaders. Check this out if you like instrumental progressive metal, like Animals as Leaders and Polyphia, that kind of thing. Intervals is among the best in that category. Then I have Of Montreal releasing Lady on the Cusp. This is the 19th album by this American band. Obviously, they put out a lot of music, making 19 albums. This is pop rock with indie, psychedelic, progressive, electronic, R&B, and funk influences. And I like what I've heard from Of Montreal. It's very quirky pop rock. The early release single I heard from this album was very weird, and that caught my attention. So I'll be checking this out. Next up, I have Lucassen and Soeterboek. I'm not sure how to pronounce that name. And their project Plan 9, and the album is called The Long Lost Songs. This is the debut album by this project from the Netherlands. It's hard rock with heavy metal and progressive rock influences. And I love Arjen Lucassen. I love his work with Arion and Star One. The singles for this particular project sound less progressive than those projects, and they sound more on the hard rock side, but they do have a bit of metal and prog sprinkled in. Check this out if you're a big fan of Arjen Lucassen. I don't expect this will be better than any Arion or Star One releases from my perspective, but perhaps if you're a person who prefers that hard rock sound over prog, you might like this better. And next up, I have also on May 17th, Pallbearer releasing Mind Burns Alive, the 5th album by this American band, and this is doom metal. And I've never listened to an album by Pallbearer before. Doom metal isn't really my main go-to genre, but I did hear some good things about them. I listened to a single from it. It sounded good, so I put it on my list. Then I have Slash releasing Orgy of the Damned, the 6th album by this American guitarist. This is more of a blues rock album for him. It'll have his typical hard rock and heavy metal influences thrown in as well, but it's more of a collaborative blues cover project. So I guess it's not original songs, it's going to be covers featuring a variety of musicians and singers, including Gary Clark Jr., Billy Gibbons, Chris Stapleton, Dorothy, Iggy Pop, Paul Rogers, Demi Lovato, Chris Robinson, Tash Neal, and Beth Hart. So he's got some big names in there, cool collaborations. This probably won't make my year-end list or anything because it's an album of blues covers, but I'm kind of curious just to hear it. And then I have Marty Friedman releasing Drama, 15th album by this American guitarist. And this will be, I'm not sure what the genre of this is going to be because the single I heard was very soft and kind of almost like classical sounding. But typically what Marty Friedman plays is more instrumental hard rock. He's got some of that progressive rock influence, heavy metal, but also ambient, classical, jazz influences. Not sure what he's going to focus on this particular album, but his guitar playing is amazing. And of course, if you're a Megadeth fan, you'll recognize the name Marty Friedman. As he's a former Megadeth guitar player, he has amazing skills. The single I heard was pretty good, so I'll be checking this out. Then I have Oliver Wakeman releasing Anam, Cara, the 6th album by this keyboardist from the UK, and it's symphonic progressive rock. And this one is obviously he's the son of Rick Wakeman, and Rick Wakeman of Yes fame. Oliver Wakeman was also in Yes as well for a few years from 2008 to 2011. I've never listened to any of his solo albums, but I heard the album trailer for this, and it sounds like he's a great keyboard player like his father. So I'm interested to check it out just on the name recognition alone and on the Yes association. So if you're a fan of that Yes and Rick Wakeman style keyboard playing, this will be a good one to check out. Oliver Wakeman and Cara. And last one I have on May 17th for my list is Darko with Greyscale. This is an EP by this American band, and it's melodic hardcore punk. I heard a single from this, and it was very fast and hardcore and fun, so I put it on my list to check out. Now we're on to one album is coming out on May 23rd, and then 5 on my list, or yeah, 5 from May 24th. The May 23rd is Azure with FYM. I guess that's just Fym. I'm not sure what that means or if it stands for something. It's the 3rd album by this band from the UK. This is progressive metal with power metal, classical, jazz, and pop rock influences. I've never listened to an album by Azure before, but the early release single I heard sounded great, so I'm planning to check this out. Then on May 24th, here's probably one of my most anticipated ones for the month. This one, along with Intervals, Red-Handed Denial, another one of the Canadian progressive metal bands. So those are the two I'm most excited for. My fellow Canadians, Red-Handed Denial, Intervals, probably because I've seen them both live several times. And I guess when you experience these bands live, you can really get their power, their full power, and kind of understand where they're coming from. Red-Handed Denial, they're releasing A Journey Through Virtual Dystopia, and this is their 4th album. They're a great Canadian progressive metalcore band. They have djent and post-hardcore influences. I love everything Red Handed Denial has done. I hope this will be no exception. The single I heard here had an amazing vocal performance, but it didn't quite capture and display the full power of the band, I thought. Um, like the band was kind of in the background and the spotlight was more on the vocals, but the vocals by Lauren Babick are so powerful in this band. She's got amazing female vocals with the harsh and clean singing as well. Fans of Protest the Hero will like this. Tesseract, Periphery, Paramore, and Metalcore. Basically, anyone who likes those bands and likes metalcore with a bit of a progressive and gent edge to it should like this. Then I have Teramaze with Eli, A Wonderful Fall from Grace. This is the 11th album by this Australian progressive metal band. I really enjoyed their last couple of albums. They're a very melodic progressive metal band that has some Christian themes in the lyrics, but isn't too overt or blatant about it. So they haven't bothered me too much with their lyrics. I'm not usually a fan of Christian lyrics, especially if they're too preachy or in your face. But this band, it hasn't bothered me too much, and the vocal and the instrumental performances from them are just amazing. So I'm going to check this out. Then I have Capstan on my list with The Mosaic. This is the third album by this American band, and this is post-hardcore with pop punk influences. And I love everything Capstan's done. I hope this will be no exception. I think fans of that kind of post-hardcore with fast guitar stuff should like this. Bands like Hail the Sun, Idola, Dance Gavin Dance. I think if you like those bands, you'll like this kind of a little bit of that emo style vocal, but with a little bit of screaming, a little bit of fast guitar, and just energetic, fun, creative songs. Check out Capstan, The Mosaic, if that sounds good to you. Then I have Base Communion with The Itself of Itself, the 10th album by this American, or not American, British from the UK musical project. It's experimental ambient drone. And this one is a solo project actually by Steven Wilson. Base Communion is the pseudonym that he releases these experimental ambient drone music under. I suspect I actually won't really like this because I'm not usually into ambient drone music. Although sometimes maybe this will be a good album to fall asleep to. I plan to check it out because I like anything where Steven Wilson's involved. Well, I like to check out anything where Steven Wilson's involved, though he can be a little bit hit or miss, but I do love most of his work and he's a great artist. So I want to check this out of curiosity. And if I don't like actively listening to it, at least maybe it'll give me a nice nap or sleep by listening to it. Or maybe I'll get nightmares because it might actually be creepy ambient music. I'm not sure. And then I have Freak Kitchen with Everyone Gets Bloody. And this is the 10th album by this band from Sweden. It's heavy metal with hard rock and progressive metal influences there. I've never listened to an album by Freak Kitchen before, but the early release single I heard sounded good. So it's on the list. And now we're at the last day of the month here. I've got 3 albums on my list for May 31st. First one being Bad Omens with The Concrete Jungle, the OST, which stands for the original soundtrack. This is the 4th album by this American band that's metalcore with alternative and electronic influences. And yeah, Sumerian founder and CEO Ash Avildsen clarified in a comment on the band's Instagram announcement that OST stands for official soundtrack and that Concrete Jungle is the band's original comic book series and graphic novel that will be out on Sumerian Comics. So Bad Omens is kind of dipping their toe in both the music game and music industry, but then also in comic books. And this is kind of the soundtrack for comic book or graphic novel. So if you like that kind of thing, maybe this will be a cool thing for you to check out. I'm more about the music, so I'm not really going to be checking out or caring about the graphic novel or comic book or anything like that. But sounds like some solid metalcore music, and I think they're getting pretty big. They seem to be pretty popular in the metalcore scene, so I'm going to check this out. And then I have Psychophant releasing their debut album, self-titled Psychophant. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. They're a Norwegian band, and they make progressive rock with some jazz fusion, pop, funk, and surf influences in there. I'm really happy this band, Psychophant, reached out to me to ask me to talk about this album on my channel. I've already listened to it in full, actually. Just one listen through so far. I do have to say it's a truly excellent album. Definitely a contender for my top 50 albums of the year this year. So definitely a dark horse, up and coming artist. Definitely check it out. I'm sure it'll be in my top 10 debut albums list at the end of the year, unless a bunch of other amazing debuts come out and surpass it. But yeah, calling all prog rock and metal bands. My email address is in my about section on my channel. And if you want to give me early access to your music before it gets released or send me physical copies, at this point, it's pretty much 100% guarantee that I will talk about you on my channel, because I don't get too many of those messages yet. Maybe in the future, I'll need to be a bit more selective about which ones I mention if I get too many people outreaching to me, but that hasn't happened yet because I'm still just a small YouTube channel. I need to get a lot more popular to before I get inundated with hundreds of emails from bands or something like that. So Psychophant has released 2 singles from the album so far. They're planning to drop 2 more before the release of the album, so keep your eyes and ears open for those. The intro of their single Memories of Old really reminds me of Rush, and in general, a lot of the bass playing in this band reminds me of Geddy Lee, which is great because Geddy Lee is one of my favorite bassists of all time. The drums, though, sound more like Led Zeppelin style drumming rather than Neil Peart of Rush. The vocals don't sound like Rush or Zeppelin at all. The vocals kind of remind me more of like Baroness, and the guitars do sound a little bit like Rush, though. So if you like that combination of like Rush, Led Zeppelin, and Baroness, but then like sprinkle in a little bit more jazziness and funkiness and pop and surf and like a little bit of this like on the these kind of like reggae almost, with these like upstroke guitars on the ands of the beat. There's a lot of interesting things going on this album. I need to listen to it more to really digest it and put together all my thoughts, but I thought it was pretty cool. And lastly, I've got Mariana Semkina releasing Siren, the second album by this Russian artist, progressive rock with pop rock influences. And Mariana Semkina is a Russian-born singer and songwriter based in the UK since 2020. She's released music as a solo artist, but also as a member and co-founder of the bands I Am the Morning and Mayor. This is her second solo album. I have not listened to her first. I've heard good things about I Am the Morning and about her solo music. I think I might have listened to one of the singles, and it sounded good, so it's on my list. And that's it for albums that I'll be checking out in May 2024. I'm sure some more will come up, maybe in the comments down below this video that you're about to leave, and tell me, hey, don't forget about this one. I do appreciate those comments, so definitely let me know. I always like to check out new music. Obviously, there's only so much I can listen to, so I had to, I have to pick and choose the ones that I'm most excited for. Maybe I'll try to squeeze in like 30 or 31, like keeping it to like about one a day to focus on, so that I'm not like overwhelmed with new music. But definitely let me know if there's anything else coming out and which of these you're most excited to hear. And stay tuned for my first impressions on all these albums. Peace out.